All right, so the skin unit. So we'll start into skin, hair, nails, and that kind of thing. So I put those there, chapter 14, the pages, 18, those pages, and we're going to do, I brought Bristol board, and we will learn about those disorders we have to do, and we'll post them up. And then you guys can take notes on them or whatever you want to do. We'll do that later on, and then tomorrow we'll do wound care. And then so additional stuff. And again, like the worksheet I made up, we'll have a lot of the main points, and I'll give you some time today to work on that, to go through it and look at that too. So as far as anatomy goes for this unit, so there's skin, hair, nails, and then also we will mention mucous membranes. So in the unit we just finished, do you remember what kind of tissue most of these you're going to find on most of these, since they're all lining? Epithelial, yep, epithelial. Well, it is here. You can take notes if you like, whatever works for you, but I'm also posting this on D2L, and if you need help finding how to get into that or printing them. Yeah, and we can print it too if you want. So starting off, so this is an overview of kind of all of basics for the skin. So the things, it looks complicated, but the more you look at it, the less complicated it will get, and the further down as we go through the slides, it will break it down into easier sections, because this has the hair in it as well, and it shows nerves and that kind of thing. So two main layers for the skin that we are going to worry about: epidermis and dermis. So that outer layer, that's, it has the nice waterproof cells, what we can touch. So that's your epidermis, and that's going to be the outermost layer. Below that is the dermis, and so that's where you're going to find a lot of those skin structures. So those are, in the later slides, it talks about skin accessory structures. So that's where you're going to find a lot of those things. And then below the dermis, you have fatty tissue, or if you've heard of someone talk about subcutaneous. So that just means cutaneous means skin, sub means under, so that's what it means, under the skin, so the epidermis and the dermis. That's just a microscopic view, so the epidermis and then the outer layer, you can see where that's like dry skin cells that would then flake off. So that's kind of how our skin works in a cycle. New skin cells are made, they come closer to the surface, and then they die and flake off. And you can kind of see that happening here. So the dermis, epidermis, and then the dead skin cells. So can you see where the individual little cells are here in the epidermis? So those are like epithelial cells. So all of these little, they look like pockets almost here. You can see the nucleus inside. That's the center part of the cell there. So microscopically, that's just what our skin looks like. So there's the two primary layers, the epidermis and the dermis. Epidermis being the outermost layer, and they die and flake off. And skin pigment is what gives our epidermis its color. So there's pigmented cells underneath the epidermis that gives color. So some people will have more color than others. Some people might be practically see-through their skin, but so that's what it is. There's skin pigment there, which you've probably all heard of anyway. And that outer piece being waterproof, because if we go out in the rain, our bodies don't soak in all of that water that's coming on our skin, right? To some extent we do, so that's the reason why your hands will get wrinkly if you have it in, if you're washing dishes or whatever. It will absorb some water, but it's generally pretty waterproof. So then the dermis underneath the epidermis, so that's a lot of connective tissue. So the epithelial tissue is on the outside. Under that, it's connective tissue generally. Then you have those structures inside of it. So that's where the hair follicle is. So there's another diagram of the hair. So the follicle is the piece that's underneath your skin where it starts to grow. So that the dermis is in there. Things like oil glands, the nerve endings, blood vessels, all of those things are in that second layer, the dermis. And then below that you have a layer of fat tissue. That's just a picture to know it, like as we age, our skin changes. Did you guys remember what the main chemical is that changes? Collagen, yeah. So some people get injections of that too to help with wrinkles. And they're more prominent in places that move a lot because that skin is getting stretched and used more often. That's why, like around her mouth and yeah. Maybe you can see like the pucker there, but she could also be like 105 and just talked a lot and smiled a lot, right? So that's possible too. I don't know how old this lady is. So hair is one of those accessory structures. So the hair follicle, which I already mentioned, so that's in the dermis, and that's where the hair starts to grow. It's kind of just like a tube-like structure in the dermis, and the hair root is inside that hair follicle. So if you pull out your hair, sometimes you can even see bits of the skin and the hair follicle you might see, but bits on the end of the hair. And then the shaft is the visible part. So all the parts that you can see and touch outside of your skin, that's the hair shaft. So erector pili, that's a tiny little muscle. So that's attached to like every hair. So when we talked about when our bodies are automatically trying to warm up, yeah, and we can get goosebumps that make our hair raise, or if we get scared or whatever. It's that tiny little muscle that's connected to the hair follicle. So that muscle contracts and that makes your hair stand on end. So think of how many of those we must have on our bodies. Because almost all of our body, other than the palms of our hands and the bottoms of our feet, are like mucous membranes. So all of our body will have hair follicles on it. So think of how many of those tiny little muscles are there to make that happen. So yeah, it shows the root of the hair, the follicle, the tube-like structure, and sebaceous gland, so that's an oil gland. So all of our hairs, more so the ones on our head than other places, but they all have oil glands. And so what do you think the purpose of that would be? Moisture, exactly. Yep. Yep. So it keeps our hair and skin from getting too dry. And as we age, that can, slow down some, so that as we age, our hair might be a little drier and our skin would be a little drier. And that's the structure that's not working the same as it used to. They say people that have really oily skin are probably going to have nicer skin as they age. So if you've always battled with having oily skin, when you're 90, you might have nicer skin than someone that had like clear, dry skin, because you have more moisture happening. Your hair might stay shinier and nicer longer too if you've always had kind of an oilier hair. So receptors, so we'll talk more about this when we do the nervous system, but just know in the skin, that's where those nerve endings and receptors live, in the dermis there. So that will pick up feelings of things. So if something's cold, those nerve endings underneath or in your skin picks up that it's cold or hot, or there's even different receptors that will say, oh, hey, that's pressure. And then a pinch, it'll say, oh, that's pain. So there's different receptors that can tell what's happening on your skin. There's even different ones that would detect a light touch. So barely touching your skin, a receptor would say, oh, yeah, that's a light touch. And then deeper pressure, so located a little deeper in the dermis, it will even say, oh, that's a deep pressure. So there's all kinds of different receptors in your skin to tell you those different things that are happening around your skin. And that's also something as we age that can change. So some of those receptors over time might get damaged or not fire as much. And so decreased sensation was something we talked about in our other classes that can happen as we age. And what could be some problems that arise because of that? If you have less sensation. Yeah, you might not realize you're touching something hot until it's burning. Like a heating pad or blanket? Yeah. Yes. And they might not realize it's too hot until it's already caused a burn or wound there. Yeah. Also, if a shoe is causing a blister, there might be less sensations. That's just another example in that you might not know that you're having an injury to your foot, or you might not know you've stepped on a tack if you don't have that sensation. Yeah, over time with uncontrolled blood sugar, you can lose some sensation too. Yeah, and circulation. So this just shows you don't have to know these different like names of all of these receptors, but it just shows how many different ones our skin will have. So like free nerve endings are close to the surface, and those can detect pain. The pressure ones are down a little bit deeper, so it makes sense that it's for pressure, right? Sensitive touch are up close to the top of your skin. Yeah, so just know, you don't have to know those specific names. I can't even pronounce most of the names, so it's just knowing that there are different ones that detect different things, and that's one of the structures in our skin that we're going to talk about. So nails are another part of this organ system. So what do you think the purpose of nails are? Yeah, why do you think we need protection there? Very sensitive. Yes. Did you?
I stepped like on a little thing, you know, like on the bottom of your couch with foot, and it's like black.
Oh no. And so if you've cut your nail too short, you know what that feels like when it's really short. It's very tender. If you are someone that chews your nails and you've gotten rid of your nails your whole life, your fingertips might not be as tender for that reason. So those nerves that were there, they've probably been damaged over time, so you don't have that same sensation that you would if you kept longer nails.
So what is like, so when your nail falls off, like what is under your nail? Because it really hurts. Like what
Yeah.
hurts?
So it's called your nail bed. Is it? I don't even think. Yeah, nail bed. So underneath your nail. So it's like part of your dermis basically. So right underneath your nail, you don't have epidermis there. You just have dermis, and it has lots of free nerve endings. So when you pull that off, or if has anyone ever had toenails removed, if they were ingrown or whatnot? So sometimes the recovery from that can be hell because it is so tender and so sensitive underneath that nail.
In the door, like it's shut on.
Yeah.
And then my nail, like it started falling off backwards, and then a new one was growing in, so I just like clip it backwards.
Yeah.
It looks so bad. Like it
Yes.
was disgusting.
I did when I was pregnant. I closed my thumb in a car door, and ended up partially lifting the nail off, and another one grew underneath. And it's like horrible pain. Sometimes even when people have to get multiple toenails removed at the same time, they'll even give them epidurals or spinal anesthesia for a time afterwards because it can be painful. For some people, if they've had really bad ingrown toenails, it might not be as bad because they've become conditioned to having really bad pain there anyway. So it might not be as bad, but it can be. It came off on its own eventually, and a new one grew back. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes that can be a problem because if you damage your nail, underneath, blood can pool and collect there. So sometimes they'd have to put a hole in it to relieve that pressure too. Yeah, she jammed her finger. When you were 7? No, 7-year-olds would not take very kindly to that. It traumatized you, obviously. Yeah, so if you're caring for someone that's had nails removed, just know it's very sensitive and it can be painful, and that's a good time when you're going to be maybe looking into bed cradles and that kind of thing, because even blankets touching it can be sore. Okay, so the free edge, so this edge of our nail, that's what we call the free edge of your nail. Then you have the nail body. The lunula is that little white moon-shaped luna, so I help you remember, so that moon-shaped white spot there. So that's partly where new nail tissue is being made, so that's part of the nail root that you can see poking up there. So the nail root is where new nail is made, and then it's pushed out to become the nail body and the free edge. Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, it's part of the anatomy, right?
So the function is that's the thing. What else?
What's that? Its function of nails is pretty much to protect the ends of our fingers. I mean, we use them for other things.
Like that. You know, when you press your fingers, see if your circulation is going?
Yes, yep.
So it could be protect.
It's not necessarily a function, but we do that to look at circulation. So what she's talking about is if you look at your nail bed, it should look generally pink. And when you push on it, it will turn white. And when you let go, that pink should come back pretty quickly.
It doesn't come back with that.
Yeah, if it comes back slowly or doesn't come back, then your circulation is decreased to your hand. Same as with toes. And if you've ever had someone with a cast, they'll tell you to check nail beds to make sure they look pink. If they start looking white or blue or gray, then that circulation is not happening that needs to fingers or toes. So looking after someone with a cast, they might get you to watch stuff like that. Yeah, because even elastic bandages too can cut off circulation. And there's not a whole lot of new things in here. I mean, you guys kind of probably know about a nail root, or this just shows the bone and the nail bed. You've all heard of that, I'm sure. The free edge. So lunula is a new word probably. You know about the cuticle. That's just the skin covering the root of the nail there. So I know. I like that word actually. So other skin accessories, so sweat glands, and sweat glands are located in the dermis, but the sweat comes out through pores in your skin. So some areas of our skin would have more sweat glands than others. And so when your CCA is paying attention to those spots that will hold on to sweat or that sweat more for hygiene reasons is important. So underarms, in folds where sweat wouldn't necessarily be able to evaporate off, so like under breasts or abdominal folds or in groins. Yeah, all those places where sweat's going to kind of accumulate. And also oil, so sebaceous glands is the other piece there. So oil will also accumulate in those areas. And so keeping those places dry and clean will give less bacteria and less chance for skin breakdown. So when we talk about wounds, moist environments that are kept moist a lot, so people that have incontinence and whatever, they are more likely to have skin breakdown for those reasons. So mucous membranes. So this is still epithelial tissue that's lining, the same as skin has the epithelial tissue lining it. The only difference between mucous membranes is that this place is going to secrete mucus. So it's going to be a lot of our cavities. So inside of our mouth has mucous membranes because it's always moist. So think of the places that stay moist on someone's body. And also organs. So mostly ones that are open to air or open to the outside is more like it. So even our digestive tract, if you think of it, it has an opening on both ends. So technically that is being open to the environment. So it's a cavity within our body. So our nasal passages have mucous membranes, our mouth, even the lining of our esophagus and our trachea has mucous membranes, inside of our lungs. So any of these kind of cavity type organs is lined with mucous membrane. Our stomach too, intestines. Mucous membranes are kind of part of the organ system. So even the inside of our lungs have mucous membranes. You think about if you're sick and coughing things up, that stuff is coming from somewhere, right? And it's your mucous membranes creating that sticky stuff that will capture bacteria and help get it out of there. So functions of the skin. So this is going to be kind of your physiology piece of it. So number one is protection. So think of all what could happen to your body if you didn't have your skin. So even if I had no skin and I touch the door handle and there's bacteria on it, it's immediately already into my body, right? So skin protects that or creates that barrier to prevent pathogens and other microbes from getting into your body. Yes. Yeah, it helps protect. Yeah, so it also protects from injury or exposure. So if our organs were just hanging out there with like some kind of thin non-skin thing holding it in, that would be bad. Our bones also help in that too, but our skin is the biggest one on the outside. So storage. So part of it is that our skin cells do store things like nutrients and moisture, but it also prevents a lot of things from leaving our body. So we could drink all we wanted, but if we didn't have skin, it would just evaporate back out. So we would get dehydrated very quickly. So if you think, so an example of how, like if you picture how that works, so someone that's covered in a lot of burns, one of their biggest risk factors, other than that they're going to be exposed to all these pathogens, is that they get dehydrated very quickly. So if you have a burn over a large part of your body, moisture is evaporating out of that like crazy. So often you'll see dressings and then like other kind of waterproof dressings over top of it to try to keep that person's moisture inside. So sensation, so all of those receptors we talked about in the dermis, it's housed in our skin. So because our skin is there, we can feel like pleasant sensation and unpleasant sensations all around us. And temperature regulation. So that's a big one. Because it prevents our moisture from evaporating so quickly, evaporation can take heat with it. So it helps to provide some insulation and keep that moisture from evaporating. But on the other side of it, it also has the sweat pores that give off sweat, and as it evaporates, it helps cool us too. So it does help to keep us warm, but it also will help keep us cool when we need it to. And one of the things our body automatically does to help cool is having blood circulation closer to the surface of the skin too. So dilating your blood vessels so that blood flows there too. So it helps give off heat that way. Good there. See some of you writing. So common causes of skin breakdown. So we already talked about some of the age-related changes. So there's thinning, less sensation and circulation, less mobility. What are some other age-related changes that? What? Yeah, colors. I mean, different things can happen to our skin to make patches or color change. That's true. Some people get things called like age spots or brown, different pigment areas on your skin. That can happen, yep. So our skin does get thinner. When we talk skin tears. Yep, so we're going to talk about skin tears too. But yeah, in some elderly people, their skin can be like tissue paper almost. So
My grandma really, she's very, very thin.
yeah, because your skin is usually thinner, and so you can see through it a little more. Yeah. So less sensation sometimes as we age. Circulation can be decreased some, so that can be a cause of skin breakdown. Less mobility, so we'll talk more a little bit about pressure ulcers. We'll do that tomorrow with wounds, but bruising, yeah, definitely can bruise more easily, because also like blood vessels are a little more fragile too. So some elderly people, their arms and their legs can be covered in bruises, especially if they've been to the hospital and having blood work or IVs or any of that. Also, some medications can make that worse too. So if you're on any kind of blood thinner, you're going to bleed more. If you're on steroids a lot, so even younger people can have thinner skin if you have to take steroids a lot for like breathing or anything like that. So dryness, so your skin can break down more easily if it's dry. So that's something as CCAs helping people to keep their skin from drying out too much or adding moisture. So not over bathing people, adding a moisturizer to their skin. Some soaps are definitely worse than others. Yeah. Some people might want to use their own soap, so you have to work with what they'd like to use, but you know yourselves, like if you use some body wash or some soap, your skin will feel like it's dried out, and then some it won't be as bad. So certain diseases or illnesses can make you more likely to have skin breakdown. So Mary already mentioned diabetes, high blood pressure. So that has to do with circulation and sensation, those two things. So poor nutrition or hydration. So we'll talk about nutrition more in the nutrition class, but basically for our body to repair injuries, you have to have enough protein and nutrients because your body has to make cells out of something, and a huge part of our cells is made up of protein. So if you don't have enough protein or fats or carbohydrates in your diet, your body won't be able to repair itself. You won't be able to make the new cells that fill in the injured areas. So incontinence or other reasons to have excess moisture, so sweating a lot maybe. Poor hygiene, so that could be skin or nails. So nails, cutting it too close to the nail bed could be a place for skin to break down. Not cleaning in those skin folds where moisture and bacteria can build up. And then friction and shearing. So using good body mechanics, a turning sheet to help people move, not pulling them across bedding or anything as much as is possible. So wound, I'll do that tomorrow, so I'm just going to kind of skip some of this wound stuff here. So that is quite a big chapter, the wound chapter. It has all kinds of good information. Most of the time, CCAs you are not changing dressings, but there might be some instances where you are. So even if someone has a scrape, like helping them to clean it and put a Band-Aid on if you're in home care or whatever, or even in facilities, sometimes you're putting like a Band-Aid on. So depending on where you work, there'll be different rules about it. Simple dressings you might do, and so your book does kind of review that. But primarily it's going to be just if that dressing, so we'll over like what a dressing would look like if it needed to be changed, like when you should notify your supervisor about that stuff. So we'll talk more about that. So as far as illnesses go, so let's see. Do you guys need a break now, or do you want to wait a bit? A break now might be a good idea. So I'll let you guys have like I don't know, 15 minutes or something. Come back at 10, and we'll get started on doing some of these illnesses. So I did up a page, and I forget how many there are in this, but we'll hand it out and we'll go over that when you come back. It can be, yeah. Hello. Yes.
There's a few muffins left there. I covered them up.
Oh.
Catering, if somebody wants them.
Here.
There's like a few.
Cool, thanks. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, someone just brought those in actually, so help yourselves. It was from something they were doing for Occupational Health and Safety Week, I think. Sleeping. Yeah. On Wednesday we'll have more time then. That's the Intro to Crisis one. Yeah. Yeah, on Wednesday we're gonna work on it.